So today what I wanted to talk to you about is the difference between the GDPR and the Data Protection Act 2018 when it comes to processing special category information, and specifically in relation to criminal records DBS checks. The challenge here for me has actually been that this is the first time, I think, in operational processes where you really have to deviate from the GDPR. The GDPR does not give you the information that you need, and the Data Protection Act 2018 is really explicit in how these things are done. So under Schedule 10 of the GDPR, it talks specifically about special category data and the use of criminal records and criminal record checks. And it's a tiny little paragraph, and all it really says is that you have to go and look at member state law, which is when we have to go over to the Data Protection Act 2018. Now this is where it gets complicated, and this is kind of why I wanted to do this video today. The Data Protection Act talks in a number of different parts, a number of different schedules around special category information, and very in particular around the use of criminal history checks, record checks, criminal record checks, disclosure and barring service checks as they're more commonly called. There's a very explicit set of criteria under which you can process special category information, specifically again relating to criminal history and criminal records checks. And a number of people that I've been speaking to are starting to struggle with that. And what it's caused me to do is go back and have a look at our own processes and start to think, are we doing things in the right way, and are we doing things in the best possible fashion? What I have come to realise while we've been looking at this is that DBS checks, and certainly criminal record checks, while they're incredibly useful, they are incredibly invasive. Now historically they've always been done, and we've used them for a number of things, but realistically they should only be used for high risk individuals or people who have access to particularly sensitive information such as financial information, people that have access to vulnerable individuals, or where there's a substantial public interest. So for instance, we know that we have huge numbers of engineers who go out into the world and go out into people's homes and have access to people's houses. So it's very important for us that we know, or that we are comfortable with these individuals, that we are comfortable allowing these people into our customers' homes. So we carry out those background checks on all of our engineers. We also carry them out on individuals and employees who have access to customer records and who have access to financial records as well. This has always been the case, and we've always done it this way, but categorising that and finding that the right lawful basis and the right category for that to happen under the DPA 2018 has been a really interesting challenge for us. The other thing that you need to consider if you are carrying out DBS checks, so when you're looking at proportionality and your risk, so what's the likelihood that an individual may need a check? Is there a public interest? Are they working with children? Are they working with vulnerable adults? All those sorts of things. Is there a substantial public interest in that activity being done? One of the things that I would really suggest that you have, or that you look to have in place, is a good policy around DBS checks. So a policy for your organisation that states when you're going to carry out DBS checks, why you would carry out DBS checks, and what employees those checks relate to. And that's going to put you in really good stead should anybody ever come and ask you about why you're doing particular checks. As I say, the thing that you probably want to concentrate on is senior employees, people who have access to financial information, customer records, anybody that's going into somebody's house. Of course, if you're working with children in any way, shape or form, then those people should be DBS checks as well. The other thing that's important to remember is that actually a DBS check is taken at a moment in time, so it's a snapshot in a moment in time. You've had the check, it's come back and it tells you that there's either unspent convictions or there's not. This is not a repeat thing. Nobody's going to come back and tell you that this is fine moving forward. So some companies do look to carry out these checks on a regular basis, maybe every 2 or maybe every 3 years. If you are going to do that, then you do also need to consider how you're going to set that up with your employees. We've had discussions recently around asking the employees to consent to it. As part of their role, you consent to having a DBS check. As we know from historically, consent can't be reasonably freely given when you're an employee, because there's an imbalance of power between the employer and the employee. If I don't give you my consent to carry out the checks, I can't be employed, so therefore I'm going to give you my consent. It's unlikely to be freely given. If you do want to look at doing repeat checks and you have that in mind, then I would suggest that you look at another basis for carrying that out. And that may well be that you put it into their contract, so you make it part of their contractual obligations. And again, you need to make sure that these checks are proportionate and that they're being done fairly. The final thing, that if you are carrying out DBS checks and you're wondering what else to be doing, obviously make sure that the storage of those checks is really, really, really well controlled. This is special category information. This is possibly the most or some of the most personal information that you can collect about somebody. My recommendation would be that you keep a record of the DBS number, so a record of the check being carried out, but not a record of the output of that. There is no need to keep that information. There's no real need to keep the certificate either. As long as you've got the certificate number and the date the check was carried out, and that's usually sufficient. And obviously make sure that access to that information is controlled and is only available to the people that really, really need it, so people that work in HR. And of course, the final thing is make sure that you respect these individuals' rights to privacy. Some of these will come back, and people have had spent convictions and unspent convictions, and these things are incredibly sensitive and incredibly personal. So just be aware of that and make sure that you're not discussing things with people that you shouldn't really be discussing them with. As I say, these things are always quite short, and I try not to go into too much detail, but I hope that's given you some insight into the world of special category data and disclosure and barring service checks or criminal records checks. If you do like these videos and you do find them useful, please do give them a like, give them a comment down below, and obviously give them a share as well. And if there's anything in particular that you want us to cover, please do drop me a message or let me know. That's it for today. Hopefully we'll be back with some more information on subject access requests fairly shortly. We're just going through a process for that as well. But until then, if you do have any questions, as I say, give me a shout. Thanks for your time.